Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We're continuing the concise presentation of fiqh. We were dealing with marriage. MashaAllah. Let us begin. Okay. Bismillah. Number 2. So this would be about how husbands' rights and stuff like that. Number 2. A right of the husband upon his wife is that she should guard her honor and also guard his honor. Bismillah. She should also look after his wealth, children, and other household affairs. Okay, so here we see the gender roles. So looking after the children. Nutrition matters. Nutrition of the kids' food. You can't look after your children if you're high. So sobriety. You can't properly take care of your kids if you're smoking blunts and zoning out or taking a bunch of Percocets and Chardonnay. The wealth, so if you're an ignoramus and you're making your husband buy you these ridiculous expensive purses and shoes, but meanwhile you're struggling to pay the health insurance and you're struggling with other more important items, or you're feeding the children fast food so that you can get more makeup, you're not really looking after his wealth, are you? Therefore, the righteous women are devoutly obedient to Allah and to their husbands, and guard in the husband's absence what Allah orders them to guard, e.g. their chastity, their husband's property, etc. Quran 4:34. The Prophet, peace be upon him, also said, "The woman is a guardian over the household of her husband, and she will be asked about her responsibility." So the household. This is important for you not to invite chicken heads over. Don't just invite everyone to your home, and don't let everyone know where you live. Consider your home as a privileged space. That's like your sanctuary where your children should feel safe. You don't just have to let everyone in. You have to be very cautious. It is the right of the husband to have the wife beautify herself for him, and that she have a pleasant smile on her face. Okay, so beautification of herself at home. This one, I have been, how do you put it? As I'm older now, this is really important, because as you stay with your husband, you get used to each other. And I noticed that sometimes we women can tend to overlook the small things of beautification. The hard part is when you have small children. That's the difficult part, and why so many women suffer with mental illness during the postpartum period. When the children, are under 2, and you don't have help, you don't have a family, it's very difficult to look like a Barbie and be a super mom. This is very hard on moms. I have been noticing so many women now use a lot of nannies. And then those women are out working out, and then the nannies are doing all the care. They're at the spa, the child's at daycare. I think there's a balance of how much do you spend time beautifying yourself versus raising your child. It's so difficult for moms, really. I've seen more and more women talk about night nurses, postpartum doulas. They wish it would be covered by health insurance, because if you're sleep deprived and you're doing it all yourself, and you also have other children and some of them too young to help, you're strapped. Your brain is just frazzled, and some women handle postpartum blues easier than others. Nutrition plays a huge role. This is why I don't encourage women to be drinking. Like, I tell them, don't be drinking, man, because they'll be depressed, they start drinking, and then it just becomes worse and worse, and then they actually pick fights with their husband. They get depressed that they can't look like a Barbie. Because while you're getting burped up on, changing diapers, nursing, it's so difficult to, be beautiful when you're... Not that you should be frumpy, but It's hard, man. If you're taking care of your children in the best ways, putting your children before yourself. The balance of the selfish mom and the giving mom is such a hard dance, truly. A pleasant smile, that's hard. Because I have kind of what they call a resting bitch face. People think I'm angry when I'm just like not like just stone reading, you know, like this stone face, not like where it's grumpy, but it's kind of just neutral. I'm not a very smiling person unless there's a joke being told. I get you don't want to come home to like a scowl, but having to smile, I don't know, it's hard. That's a hard one. I smile when I see my children. When you're in your beginning of your marriages, you know, like, sure, you're like, I love you. But it's just like, oh, it's your husband's face. Like, does he smile every time he sees you? I don't know. I've never seen that. I've never seen a woman... most women, they fake it. But I noticed the women who fake smile are very psychotic. There's a lot of women who have, like, they open their eyes really wide and they're like, and you're like, ah! I don't know, man. Frowning and appearing in manners that he dislikes. At-Tabarani has recorded from the narration of Abdullah ibn Salam that the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, "The best of women is she who pleases you when you look at her, obeys you when you tell her to do something, and guards in your absence when she is obliged concerning herself and your wealth." So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant women a husband who likes looking at them. It's most amazing to see women letting themselves go in their house in front of their spouse and then taking utmost care to beautify themselves upon going out of the house. This is true. This is that. Okay, fair point. Like I said, I really do think it comes down to, like, okay, husbands will put on cologne when they go out, but when they're home, some of them don't put cologne, thinking like, oh, why? I gotta impress my wife. You know, there was a time I always put perfume on, even when at home, or I have like incense and the candles, hair oil, whatever. But I remember one time I was spraying my perfume. My husband says, "What are you doing? Smelling yourself?" And I was like, "No, it's for you." He's so rude. But, you know, it's like, you got to be careful, but you don't perfume yourself going out, you know. It is true though. I have seen that. Like when you go to work, you're like super looking good. You come home, but I think some women would categorize that as you feel comfortable to be your natural, non-performative self around your husband. That he likes you for what you actually look like and behave like. When you go to work, it's all a masquerade. It's all performative. It isn't real. You're in a character mode. Because you can't really be yourself at work in so many jobs, you know. But beautification can mean different things for different people. Some husbands, they don't want to see 20 layers of makeup. They just want you freshly showered, you know. And make sure you're shaved, like your legs and arms, and you're not, like, got food on your face, you know what I mean. Make sure your hair smells nice. The famous statement has actually become true. Like an ape in the house and like a deer in the streets. That's funny. You know, just like a orangutan. But then like a deer, like so graceful. That's funny. Beware of Allah, O servant of Allah, concerning yourself and your spouse. The person who has the most right for you to beautify yourself is your husband. So here, I hope to be able to help my daughters, if they're blessed to have children and I'm blessed to be alive during that time, that I can help them take care of the baby so that they can have time to beautify themselves. Because you'd be surprised, like, you gotta pray 5 times a day so your face is getting wet. You gotta cook, you smell like food, you know, you're cleaning. You gotta go do groceries, like you're on the go, and then when nighttime comes, you finally got the kids down at bed at 7, 8 o'clock at night to put on a bunch of makeup and high heels and a mini skirt for your husband, you know, you want to go to bed. And what if he comes home at like 10, you know, from work? What are you going to do? Stay up and then you're more sleep deprived? And then naturally, the less sleep you get, the less glow you have, the less healthy you look. You start to look worn out. And the more tired you are, the more mentally ill you become, and the more depressed you become, and you become psychotic. So, rest helps women to want to beautify. Relaxation. That's another reason why so many women want rich husbands, because they can go by the pool, they can have a lot of self-care and a lot of time for self-care. Whereas the poor woman has to do everything herself and then be the master chef, be the master maid, and then be the porn star. It's very difficult. So I can understand why some women, they're like, okay, if that's the deal, then you gotta go with a rich guy, because you can cut out a lot of the stress and trauma of being in a marriage. So you can have an easy life and look beautiful and wear jewelry and have nice clothes and have like all the adornments you want, because he can buy it and he doesn't want you to look raggedy. But a poor husband, some of them push their wives harder, but they expect the most. It's really fascinating. I've been looking at this a lot from so many different angles, because it's, if a woman wants a guy who's rich, he can't make money fall from the sky. And when the children are tiny, to expect her to like have an hour to work out, have 30 minutes for a shower, then to dry her hair or do her hair, you have to have somebody watching the child. When they're of a certain age, like they're in public school, mashallah, that's way different, right? That's my point, is that when they start to get, 2, 3 years old, life gets easier. But, right after is so hard for mamas. So hard. And if you examine the crime cases of women who've harmed their babies and what made them snap, malnutrition, lack of sleep, lack of emotional support, lack of mental health services. I mean, subhanAllah, you can see these problems and you're like, okay, we gotta fix this. We gotta help them. If you want a pretty wife, you have to also be kind to her. You have to be supportive emotionally. If you're always negative, miserly, aggressive, down-putting, you drain her energy, you don't really add to it. You're not very communicative, you're kind of neglectful even with how you ask how her day was. Because you have to remember, women like to talk, and and men and women are different. Oh, a quiet wife who never talks is great. I've heard these jokes. But then I've also seen the jokes where it says like a guy there's like a guy who messages a man's wife on Facebook. He's a loser. He's got all the time in the world to chat her up, kind of get in her head. You're at work. You don't really talk to her. You kind of ignore her. And then so-and-so guy's got time. And then before you know it, he's sleeping with your wife. And she'll say, he made me feel special. He did this and he did that. Because talking is a way in which you can get with women really fast into their head. It's fascinating. Differences between men and women. So if you look at what makes people fall apart with each other, but also if you don't have space for a personal gym, expecting her to have a body of a supermodel, which requires a lot of time and every single day. And if you have one child screaming, like, they just look at the schedule. This is why so many women want rich men, because they have a nanny. They can go to the gym. They can afford the best gyms that have childcare on the premises, and so they can have time for all that. But if you really look at how many hours are in a day and how much time she'll get to herself in like the first 2 years, and she's barely holding on to her mental health, this is why a lot of marriages fail as well. It's pretty scary. Because a woman always remembers how she was treated when she was pregnant and postpartum. And if she's not able to do self-care, now some women will say, you know, having a shower is self-care, and others will say that's actually a need. It's self-care, but it's a need. Having time just for you is important to regain your thoughts. Like, men want to get home from work, they want to go to the gym and have some time to be alone and just push iron and work out. Women need time to have that too. Whether she's lucky enough, blessed by Allah, to have a jacuzzi, and, you know, she can have a smoothie hanging out in there. She can go swimming in her pool. She can go in her garden. She can go with a chicken coop. Whatever she wants to do to relax. Go horseback riding. There's things that women need in order to stay positive, because it's hard to beautify yourself when inside you're having very horrifically dark thoughts. When a woman starts to let herself go, that's a sign that the relationship isn't healthy. And if the man is neglecting her, but she's still looking good, that's usually because she's cheating on him. Or she's planning to escape. So, like, escape as in ladder up to the next best relationship. She's baiting. She's hunting for her new stag. You have to think, you know. Like I said, everyone has different contexts. But I am very proud of moms who, they're just surviving. They're in the trenches. They got gray under their eyes. Their hair's in a bun. Their body is in pain. But their children are fed, clean, happy. They're trying their best. Far too many women look like supermodels and their kids are eating junk food. They're neglected. They don't even really bond with their mom. Their mom's just too busy with other things. So you have to see the balance. You know? You really do. Beware of beautifying yourselves for those concerning whom it is not permissible for you to even show yourself. This is from the forbidden display of one's attributes. 4. A right of the husband is that the wife should remain in her house and not leave her house, even to go to the mosque, except with his permission. Allah has said, addressing women, stay in your houses, ... Quran 33:33. So here we see, this one is, I've talked about cabin fever and how solitary confinement, isolation, loneliness. Oh, you have to have hobbies. You have to have something to occupy your mind. Okay? Hobbies. If you are in your house all day, you want to eat, you get fat. You get cellulite. You get a lot of thoughts bouncing off the walls. You really can, rearrange your decor every couple weeks. Have fresh flowers, incense, beautify your home. Get some orchids, some nice bonsai plants. Have something to do. That's why I think pets are a beautiful thing, because they kind of keep your mind off of yourself. But when your husband comes home from work, it's so important that you guys go out. The man is out in the world, he wants to rest at home. The woman is stuck inside all day and she wants to get out and be amongst nature. Maybe go to the beach, like look at the waves, feel the wind and the leaves rustling. The children also, if you have a little tot, they need to go to the playground and play. They need to be with other children. I don't think it's developmental. I don't think that's healthy to have your children always inside. And if you live in an apartment, this is why so many kids are obese. Because if your husband is working long hours every day, he's at home. If your kids are forced to stay inside, you have no yard, no balcony. This is why they're on tablets and use computers. And some of them become they have behavior problems because they're not socializing with other kids. Kids climbing trees, swimming, fishing, hiking, going to the zoo, different activities is good for their brains. Going to the museum, the children's museums. Maybe there's a little activity that's being hosted at the park for children, Sometimes at our local park, they have those bouncy castles. Kids can go in there and play. There's some activities that the schools throw for the students, and you could take them to that. And they're always during the days when my husband works. But I want to take the children so they can have, some popcorn, cotton candy, and run around and play with other children. If I only kept them inside, this is how they're going to get fat, mentally ill, depressed, and then the school will say you should medicate your kid because they have behavior problems. Kids are full of energy, especially little boys. I find it odd that people will say getting a little boy to sit in a desk all day for 8 hours is torturous, they belong outside, but then you're telling moms to do the exact same. And when you have a mom and she's trying to get stuff done and the kids are tearing up the home, and then the man comes home and he's like, why is everything a mess? You're like, well, the kids are forced to stay inside. And if you have a puppy and they can't go outside, they chew on things. It's fascinating. When I had a pit bull puppy years ago, they chewed on my mattress, they chewed on my carpet, pulled it up from the corner, chewed on my books. It's like, if they have a yard, they can play and even go to the dog park, and you exercise them, they're going to get that energy out. But if you deprive mental stimulation from your children, that's going to be hard. Now, if you have a farm, it's cool to stay home. But if you live in an apartment, that's hell on earth. Apartments are these compressed cells of depression. And some of them are super small. Like, damn, if you got a super small New York apartment, Harry Potter size, oh my goodness, man. Having to stay in that all night and all day because your husband's gone, that's rough. But I think there's a balance. Where you're going matters. Like, if you want to take the kids to go get ice cream and your husband's at work and you just go there and come back home, this is like, why is that? Why do you always have to sit inside? I think there's a balance. Because your kids have to be exposed to the world and to people, I think. You can shelter them from harm. Inshallah, I've done that pretty well. But they still gotta have some street smarts and see things. Like, how funny people can be, rude they can be, dangerous. As in, like, oh, there's a homeless man mumbling. Okay, we gotta cross the street. They gotta have some street smarts. When, you gotta be mindful of that. It's like, if you have them in the nest, you gotta let them fly a little bit and see the world. You're with them, but you have to be smart. And a lot of women, they get depressed, they don't want to beautify themselves because they're stuck inside, and then they eat and they get fat. I don't know very many women who are just at home working out all day in their tiny apartments. It's easier for women to want to work out in the gym than it is their apartments. 5. It is also the right of the husband that the wife does not allow anyone into his house except by his permission. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, as for your rights over your wives, they are that they do not allow anyone to come to your seating that you dislike, and that they do not allow anyone into your houses that you dislike. Small hero with a little one knocking on the door. As from the rights of the husband over his wife is for her to protect his wealth, and not to spend any of it except by his permission. Okay, so full financial control. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, a woman is not to spend anything from the house of her husband except with his permission. So, okay, let's make sure we see this one. So, financial. Wow, okay. So, financial control. Well, staying in your house all day, so you're broke and you can't leave. Yeah. That's pretty intense. That's why I focus a lot on how can you keep your mind up. Better talk to your wife a lot, because, at least if she's home, she can order some DoorDash. Ask for permission, though, it's important. I get it. Okay, asking permission. Okay. It was asked, O Messenger of Allah, not even food? The Prophet, peace be upon him, replied, that is the best of our wealth. Okay, so if you're at the store, like maybe before you leave, you're like, hey, can I get this? Because we do something called like DoorDash Mondays. And that's like, I ask him, can we order DoorDash? Yeah, okay, he'll tell me. I always ask permission for that. But then there's times where I'll buy, like, he'll give me money to go to get the children some, like, bagels or something. But then I'll see a salad I like, and I'll buy the salad. And I'll say, like, oh, I spent a little more than this or that, so can I have the difference? And I'm like, sure. But I always have a receipt, you know? So I think that there's a balance for sure. In fact, it is the right of the husband upon his wife that she not spend any of her own wealth except with his permission. Whoa, so you can't even spend your own money? As the Prophet peace be upon him has said, it is not allowed for a woman to consume anything of her wealth except by her husband's permission. So, to spend your own money, you need permission. So a lot of this is a permission. So this shows authority. I saw an interesting reel where women were pranking their husbands by saying, okay everyone, so I bought this makeup, it was on sale for $700, and then the husband would be in the background, and then his reaction was like, how much did you spend? And then the funny part is that there really are some women who have spent a lot of money on makeup and items like that, and the husbands who are like, why would you spend that much? So there's also scam sites where maybe she doesn't see that the website is fake. If you think about it, and if she's like, honey, can I get this thing? And then your husband checks out and he's like, I think this is fake. And then you're like, oh, I didn't notice. Like, there's things where if you ask for permission, he may be able to see something you couldn't. So that could work. I think it's just a little bit, that's rough. Like, it's your money, but you gotta ask him. I guess it just really comes down to, you just gotta really make sure who you marry. Because if they just willy-nilly start oppressing you, not letting you spend anything, I mean, that's intense. 7 is the right of the husband that his wife does not perform voluntary fasts while he is present, that is, not traveling, except with his permission. Oh yeah, I remember, because, you know, she can't have intimacy if she's fasting. So, if he wants intimacy, you know. The Lord, peace be upon him, said, it's not allowed for a woman to fast and her husband is present except with his permission. So, fasting, permission. So lots of permission. Lots of asking. So look, so far, just ask. If she can leave the house, has to ask. If she can spend his money, has to ask. If she can spend her own money, has to ask. If she can fast. So you can see that the husband does have a tight hold. It is the right of the husband that he not be bothered by reminders of what the wife spent from her wealth on the house and family. Actually, such reminders void the reward for charity. Allah has said, O you who believe, do not render in vain your charity by reminders of your generosity or by injury. Well, if she's spending more, like, I spent on the driveway, and, you know, why can't you buy the new windows? Like, I mean, if she's paying for a lot and he's not paying enough, you know, especially if she has a job, you know, I can see why that would be, they want to negotiate. Like, hey, I was going to do the bathroom renovation. Do you think that you could, pay for this next time? You know, I guess it just depends. But if she's like, I'll have you know that I spent this and that, then I could see how that could become a strong problem. It is the right of the husband upon his wife that she be satisfied with little and content with what they possess, and not overburden the husband by spending beyond his means. This is a difficult one. Oof. There's a lot of demands on sisters. It's not easy to be a Muslim woman. when you look at it. You're blessed, but it's very different than what the feminists promote. So being satisfied with little is minimalism. I am more of that fashion. But remember, if you have little money, this means she's going to be doing everything herself when it comes to the children, but you want her to look like a supermodel with an impeccable house and meeting all her prayers on time. Whew, like a Wonder Woman. Really. It's high standards for women in Islam. You gotta vault up to that fence and be able to reach it. Just be alhamdulillah for everything that you have. But poverty is an extreme burden. And then what's really sad, the women don't get to look beautiful. They don't get nice dresses or nice lingerie. They don't get to go to the nice hair salon where they get their hair done pretty. But the husbands are online looking at the 304s, they call them, the thoughts, the OF women. And you may say, that's haram, blah, 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 blah. Yes, it is haram. But they create stock accounts and they follow all those women. They look at their wife as depleted. She don't have nice clothes. She doesn't have a supermodel body. She's doing everything she can. She's a plain Jane. But then they look at these women who are beautified because they go out. They're totally wild, out and free. So they have a different type of outgoing personality. They're not submissive. They're sassy. And they wear a lot of makeup, get a lot of plastic surgery. They have their own money. And they also get the money of others. And so they have leisure. They have relaxation. And they have wealth. And yet those men are enthralled with those women. And then they turn cold on their wife. It's very strange. Not all women, but it is a real phenomenon. I've even seen some funny reels pointing this out. Only like natural women. And then their follow list of who they follow is women with those weird balloon lips and those dinosaur claw nails and all that stuff. Like, those women have had work done. And they've contoured their face. And they're showing their body. And those women are expensive, and they won't be with what they call a dusty. They won't be with a broke man. And those men will work hard to get money to get those women. But the terms of Barbara the Builder and the Pygmishas, they will be with the men when they have little, and then when the men get money, they toss those women away, some of them, and then they get the Barbie who was waiting at the finish line. They upgrade their wives, who would not be accepting of them with little. They're there when he has the wealth. And oftentimes the women who gave them children, were there with them when they were poor, they get cheated on with the woman who didn't have to wait and who doesn't have as honorable as a reputation, and she's not really going to bend. So, I mean, that's another reason why if you see polygamy can really help those women still be able to keep their husbands even when he gets wealth. Because it's really, and women have their, you know, when they get money, they leave their husbands. You know, you can look at it from multiple angles. But if you're going to be with someone when they have little, you really got to make sure that they like you. Because if you like him and he doesn't like you, then you stay with him. He tolerates you because you're just there. But when he gets money, he can finally get rid of you. Then he's gonna go with the woman he always wanted, and he doesn't care that you're with him when he had nothing, because time and time again, you'll see when men were like LeBron James, Terry Crews, they met their women when they didn't have that much wealth. Then when they got wealthy, they just cheated, and you're like, well. What? That's called the Barbara the Builder. I fall into that category. So, but it's important for the materialistic sense. Because remember the hadiths that talk about the only thing you're guaranteed is water, clothing to cover your private parts, bread, and shelter. Recall those hadiths? I posted them on my community tab not too long ago. But on my second channel, Bibliophile Hermit, I believe I posted that one on there. But you don't want to tell your husband, like, okay, you know, I want a Bugatti, so you gotta go and take out all these credit cards and get me a Bugatti. And he's like, what? You know? Overburdening can come with weddings. I made one video about why you don't need a Disney wedding. They can also overburden their husbands by expecting a giant engagement ring. That's another burden. So you can see this from so many different angles. That's what's beautiful about it. Let the rich man spend according to his means, and the man whose resources are restricted, let him spend according to what Allah has given him. Allah puts no burden on any person beyond what He has given him. Allah will grant ease after hardship. Quran 65:7. 10. It is the right of the husband upon his wife that she brings up her children from him in good manner, with patience, and not being angered with her children in front of him. Okay, hold up. Not being angered with her children in front of him. Hello, how can you... It's impossible not to get mad at your children in front of the husband, even though I get that a lot of husbands, they don't like to hear the, oh, you're bitching at the kids too much. This is a common thing that I've heard. James Sexton talked about how a lot of men would complain about how they can't stand hearing the wife bitch at the kids. But then you would hear the wife shoot back and say, well, then help raise them. You come home from work, you just do what you want to do, and then I'm stressed out, I'm emotionally touched out, I'm drained, I'm irritated, I need a break. Help raise the kids. Or some dads, they just look at their phones while the kids are being bad, and then the mom is the one who's saying, please stop. Because some kids, you can be, please stop. They don't give a damn what you're saying. You're like, stop it, no, clean this up, I don't care, do it now, do it. Like, you have to be firm, you know? You have to be so, like, every kid has different dispositions. Some kids are straight up wild. They're feral, you know? So, expecting her never to be angry with the kids in front of you is an absurd request. I mean, that's quite difficult. So hard, because kids can be very annoying. And they tax you with tantrums. And imagine you, like, you got the flu, your kids are irritating you, they're not obeying, and then, like, you know, you gotta deal with all that stress, but your husband can't handle the stress of hearing you argue with the kids. And if he doesn't want you to argue with the kids, then he needs to step in and take over and be like, your mother said this, your mother said that, right? And without supplicating against them or abusing them. That's a hard one. You know, that's very hard. I mean, they can go outside in the ghettos and I can hear, like, don't you do that, I'm gonna smack your butt. Like, this is like, a little bit of this seems so hard to attain. A little bit, I gotta say, it's a little bit like, wow. So you have to be in this sort of stoic temperament, be satisfied with poverty, ask permission for everything, stay in the house, can't even raise your voice and argue with the kids in front of them. It's very hard. That's hard. Very hard. But I get that you don't want to be a negative Nancy, you know. All of that would harm the husband, and the Prophet, peace be upon him, said, a woman does not harm her husband except that his wife of the Huri al-Ain says, do not harm him, may Allah destroy you. He is just a guest with you soon, and he will be departing you to come to us. But there's levels of harm, okay? And you gotta get some thicker skin. If you can't handle the noise of children and the confrontation that arises in the household, don't have kids. Okay? Moms need help. When a mom starts cursing, she starts shouting, she needs help and she doesn't have the support she needs. And a lot of the kids learn bad things in public schools. And there are some youths who, they're not afraid to answer their parents back. They're not afraid to slam doors. Okay, so Noah had a son who died in the flood because he was bad. Jacob had his sons, they sold Joseph into slavery. You can raise your kids well, and they can still turn out bad. We have seen that time and time again, okay? And a wicked person can have a good son. That's the strangeness. Nature versus nurture. Are you born that way? Is it part of both? How is it? You know? SubhanAllah, you gotta be careful. What is genes like? Is it the environment? You know? It's really quite difficult. But if you don't want a woman to be angry, then she has to have a very low cortisol environment. And she needs to have lots of support. It's easy to be happy if you're got all the help you need. Having sabr is a lifelong struggle and journey. You know? There's so many reels about Italian moms and Italian dads. You know, from the East Coast. You know, or a Mexican mom, she gets her flip-flop and whacks the kid's butt. Like, you know, the husband's just outside mowing the lawn, or he's eating some food, but, you know, your kid is bad in that moment, you're gonna be like, hey. But the children of today are more wild because of social media, and you can, you know, give them all the hadiths you want, quote about all the Quran you want, but peer pressure is a struggle for parents. Public school is a struggle, you know, and not everyone can afford to homeschool, and not everyone can afford private school. And you could have the best kid you think in front of you, and they do deviant things behind your back that you just don't know of. Okay? But when your kid screws up, and you're giving them a talking to, scorched earth, the husband should be present and be like, okay, your mother said don't do this, and you're given a serious talking to. And what counts as abusing them? Like, you're being an idiot, don't do this, don't do that. Is that abuse? Saying the word idiot when you're describing a specific action? You know? Don't harm him. It's like, okay, don't harm your wife. You know, she you know, you have to think. Harm him is, I think, of physical harm and emotional abuse. If you're harmed because you can't handle your wife correcting the children with a little bit of volume, then I would call you weak, and you wouldn't even be able to do jihad. Okay? If you can't handle, as a man, children being corrected, then don't have kids. Because kids are noisy. Kids, they make messes. And, you know, you need to be careful. Like, are you just supposed to, if your kid is, like, kicking the cat, are you supposed to just be like, no, honey, don't kick the cat? Or are you supposed to be like, hey, don't kick the cat? You know? Think about it. There's been tons of memes that have made fun of certain white parents. It's a cliche of white parents. How their sons, like, they'll have like a Kyle, and he'll be like, F you, mom, I'm gonna do what you say, mom. And how, if you did that to if a black boy said that to his black mom, she's gonna throw the chair at him. You know, making a joke about how white moms allow their kids to abuse them, and they have only a soft voice. That the softer you are, the more territory the youths take. You know? Because there's some parents who are super grumpy, salty, you know, like a sailor who's been on the ocean too long, and their kids are very meek and calm. It's very strange. And then you have parents who, like, they raise their kids in Christian values, and then their boys are doing wild things at frat parties and driving drunk. You know, so you can be like that all you want. It doesn't guarantee your kids are going to turn out. You know? I mean, there's so many ways you can look at this. But you could say it's annoying to hear your wife complain at the children and argue with them, but you're just going to leave her in the trenches? Be a man, step up and say, hey, don't talk to your mother that way. If she's raising her voice and you are being quiet and not intervening before it gets to that level, that's your fault because you're the man of the house, right? You got to step in and say no. Your mother said no, I said no. Then you take over. Especially when daughters hit puberty. They're going through hormones. They are trying to find their way in school. Their bodies are changing. They're going to be more on edge. And people always try to walk on their moms sometimes, but they don't do it with the dads as much because dads don't tolerate as much. The more patient some moms are, it's like the more the kids don't respect them. If you're too... I will admit, my grandma, she was very negligent. Didn't do much, didn't say much, rarely even yelled at me. And yet, I didn't listen to her at all. But my mom, she could throw me out the window, you know? She had an iron fist, and she'd get right up in my face and say, like, don't you be slamming doors in this house. Sure, that's loud, but I was on good behavior, because she wouldn't tolerate that. You know, now my dad never yelled, but the disappointment from him was enough, but he wasn't really around enough. But the softer moms, you always see them getting taken advantage of. You know, kids test limits. And if you are just like, now you stop it. If a dog, you're like, don't bite that now. Don't bite it. But if you're like, hey, no. Like you raise your volume. And, you know, while they're trying to eat the garbage, then they learn. But if you're like, no. Doesn't really work. But may Allah guide us. Okay. 11. Among the husband's rights is that the wife must treat his parents and relatives well. One who is unkind to a man's parents and relatives is not treating the husband well. It goes both ways. I think you're blessed if you don't have to be around his parents a lot. You know. All I hear is Muslim women complaining about their in-laws. How they force them to cook for them. You know, Everybody Loves Raymond was a very famous show where it just shows the hell of in-laws, you know. So, you want to be respectful, but you've got to find a way to get the hell away from people if they're making your life miserable. I've heard the most complaints from people of the Desi culture. I think that means India. Bangladesh and India, I think that's what that means. But they're always complaining. The women feel so oppressed by their husband's mom and dad. And especially if they have to live in the same house. Then you see the nightmare unfold. It's a very difficult thing. You know? Okay, we'll pause here. Because it's nap time for the youngest and they're back from their walk. Okay? But this was an intense section. You know? He has ayats and, you know, a lot of the stuff makes sense. But we have to make sure that we're exploring all options and avenues and contexts and hoping for the best and making dua that the women have good husbands where everything feels like ease and that they can do the best of their abilities as well. Okay? Don't harm your husband, but, you know, if he doesn't have thick skin to where he can't handle a teenager who's being lippy corrected, you know, I mean, to just be... The women who are always smiling too, some of them are usually hopped up on pills. A lot of them. Percocet, Vicodin, what is the other one called? Adderall. You know, they're able to have mono moods, we call it, because they're zonked out of their minds. You know, a normal human has responses to stress. You know, but I get it. You don't want it to be a consistent thing. But things go through phases. The moon goes through phases. Children's moods go through phases. Not everyone has a good day. You know. And when you're on your period and you're like not feeling good and then one of your children is arguing with you, it's bad. My brother once smashed up his television because he lost on an Xbox stream game thing online. You expect if your child does something that ridiculous that you're not gonna get angry if your husband's home? You're supposed to be like, now listen, fam, don't smash the TV. I love you so much. Do you want a cupcake? Like, what? He just smashed up the TV. Better get a whooping, you know? Gonna get yelled at. Hello? I mean, come on. I've also seen lots of videos where moms show their teenage sons having tantrums and they like smash stuff. You know? It's wild. So, you don't... There's a reason why old school moms used to get a switch, they call it. One of those sticks, like from the tree, that whack a butt. You're trying to tell me that if a husband's like having coffee, that she's not allowed to correct that child who may be doing something bad? But I get it. Some people don't. They believe in something called gentle parenting. You know, you're gonna get a little Joffrey Lannister, right? But something to think about. You know, but yeah, it's a rough one. Let me know what you think. I'd be very curious. Okay, very curious. Very curious. Please like, comment, subscribe. If you'd like to join my blog, you can go to www.subscribestar.com/MahanarGuy. Hope to see you there.